Nun Massacre, also called The Night of the Nun, or what we dub Eardrum Disintegrator 2019, is a 2018 survival horror game developed by Puppet Combo, an indie horror developer that's a foundational part of our content because it's literally the only topic keeping this channel afloat. The player takes control of Mrs. McDonald, and a letter has arrived at her house under mysterious circumstances. Her daughter has fallen ill at her boarding school, and as she makes a trip to pick her up, a storm blows in and the road is blocked. She continues on foot through the woods, and all hell soon breaks loose. Much like in previous games developed by Puppet Combo, the player has to explore many areas, solve puzzles, and gather items in order to unlock rooms and progress further while avoiding death at the hands of a vicious killer. To avoid getting caught by the nun, the player has to stay out of her sight by hiding under the beds and sneaking. If the player is spotted by the nun, she will give chase and the player will have to run away. If the nun sees the player hiding under a bed, she will flip the bed over. Also, if she sees the player getting into the vent, she will follow the player in. The nun will sometimes hide and wait for the player so she can strike. However, the player can telegraph the nun's presence with on-screen static. The player's ultimate goal is to hide from the psychopathic nun at all costs, because she won't stop until she satisfies her bloodlust. The nun as an antagonist is a freakishly tall, staple of Puppet Combo's killers, nun with her eyes gouged out, crying black, who haunts an abandoned old Catholic boarding school and attempts butchering the player, Mrs. McDonald, with a kitchen knife. While the player is walking towards the boarding school, the nun can be seen in the distance and vanishing. However, inside the school, the nun patrols the halls and rooms. To avoid being spotted by her, the player has to stay out of her sight, hide under beds, avoid making noises, and avoid using light sources when she's around. If the player is spotted, the nun will give the player chase, forcing the player to run as far away from her, or to hide under a bed. Also, the vents are not a safe place because the nun can also navigate through them. If the player falls into the barbed wire pit, they will get stuck and won't be able to move. If the player waits long enough without looking around fast, the nun will then appear, whispering. After a few seconds, she will start stabbing the player, killing them. She's able to hide behind doors. Getting too close to that door will make her bust through it instantly and start a chase. Taking physics into account, it seems like this nun is a supernatural being and pretty calculating and adept when it comes to staking out Mrs. McDonald. Along with being very proficient at hunting down anyone she feels hostile towards, she also seems to be a supernatural entity altogether, either formerly being a human or having not ever been a human in her existence. In the movie The Nun, the demon known simply as Valak is a highly intelligent devil able to manifest herself as a nun to blend in with the nuns in the monastery to avoid detection, as well as to parody their faith. Side note, that movie sucked, by the way. It wasn't scary, the jump scares were predictable, it was corny as hell despite the main protagonist being from hell. The plot was all over the place and it was just disappointing. Rotten Tomatoes review aside, what Valak did may be what the nun did to physically present herself as a faithful member of their religion, while covertly taking out her homicidal and malevolent impulses out on everyone in the boarding school. By disguising herself as a natural entity originating from the same plane when she was in the boarding school, she was probably able to kill everyone that was there, which is a process that was only bolstered by her supernatural ability to phase through solid objects and travel at nearly inhuman speeds, all while screaming maniacally at volcano eruption level volume. Although if you expected to be treated fairly by the Catholic Church in any capacity, you'd be sorely mistaken, especially if you're a young child. Like the one in the game, totally not pertaining to any real-life religious corruption. Anyway, I know it looks like she has her eyes gouged out, but wouldn't the best way to deal with her be to gouge her eardrums out? God help us. Which this Christian boarding school most likely can't assist with anymore. This technically makes her the only confirmed supernatural entity Puppet Combo antagonist, since all the others are seemingly deranged humans. Some magic and horror is nice for a change. Some speculative fiction is nice in horror.